Hey, true believers. Chris Matt coming at you with Inferno #1. And I was biting at the bit to read this book. Finally was able to pick one up from one of my local comic shops. Got it home yesterday and I just was, scooting in my seat thinking, man, do I want to read this, but, I had responsibilities. Finally got a chance to read it. And, yeah. So if you guys looked at our After Dark review of the trailer, which I'll make sure to leave a card somewhere up here for y'all to look at, I was really hoping that this was going to kick off with like a shitstorm. And instead it starts out very quiet. So we open up, and what I like to a degree is how it echoes the beginning of House of X, where in the House of X, we saw the pods. We saw Xavier standing in the pod garden, and then two people are hatched. And we see one with, but in this case, instead of seeing, Cyclops, as we did in the way back when, and we see Emma here standing with the helmet, and we see a bald man and a long-haired man. And you're thinking, okay, what's going on? This is kind of interesting. And then we skip past the reading, which I'm so tired of these explainer pages. And we're thinking, okay, we got X-Force. They're going up against the Orcus, whatever it's called. What the hell is it called? That space station circling the sun that houses Nimrod, and how they can't seem to ever take that sucker out. They sent a bunch of the main X-Men back in House of X. They failed. And then we sent up Mystique in X-Men 20. No avail. And we're thinking, okay, this is going to be kick-ass. We have X-Force. And as they would say, everything kind of goes foobar yet again. Now, before we continue on in the story, I want to say right now that this is spoilers. So we find out that it's a simulation. And this is the Orcish people trying to figure out why the X-Men, they only send like maybe 3 at a time instead of like a whole planet of X-Men or mutants. And what I like is how Sentinel Prime, I can't remember her real name, they both kind of hit the nail on the head. They say whenever it is we are getting better at responding to them. Less than 7 minutes this time. But they're not getting better at attacking us. They should be adapting, evolving. Yet they don't seem to be. If they're not learning, it must be because these mutants don't know what happens after they get here. They don't remember. You're thinking, okay, that's kind of interesting to kind of implement that they're kind of catching on to the resurrection protocols. Now, before we go any further, this is Jonathan Hickman. Again, as it's been teased, this is Jonathan Hickman's last hurrah on X-Men. This is Valerio Schiti. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Feel free to make fun of me. Artist, David Curell doing the colors. VC's Joe Sabino doing the lettering. Tom Mueller doing the design. Here's everyone else working on the book. And, of course, the X-Men were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Here we see Moira. This is her third life. If you're wondering what that means, through House of X and Powers of 10, we find out that Moira is a mutant. And her mutant ability is reincarnation. Every time she dies, she's reborn. She starts as a little girl, goes through her whole life, but she has the memories of her previous life. So this is her third life on Muir Island, where she wants to create a cure for mutants. And this, what we're looking at here, is all explained. Pages are like verbatim from House of X #2. And this is where we kind of start to see the rift between Destiny, Mystique, and Moira. And Destiny's just like such a gift, knowledge. And yet here you are using it to betray your own kind. It's a disease, what we are. I'm only trying to cure people who want it. Tell me if this doesn't sound topical. You think this? They think this stops at what? You think this stops at want? You think they'll let you keep this thing you've made? Do you have any idea how much they hate you? The humans will come for you. They'll break you, chain you, and make you their own. And then mankind will use what you've done to eliminate our entire race. So Destiny basically gave her an ultimatum of change or die in your next life. And she also says, which was kind of interesting, she says, your reincarnations are not infinite. You have 10, maybe 11 if you make the right choices. So she's basically, Destiny says, in your next life, do better. And so Destiny, Mystique's like, how can we really solidify conviction here to make her want to change? Because Moira flat out says, I don't know if I can do that. So what they do is, to make sure that she doesn't forget, burn her alive. And I will admit here, the artwork and the back and forth here is a hell of a lot better. You know, it's almost like verbatim panel for panel, but the artwork here just looks a lot better. If you go back and read House of X #2, the artwork doesn't look right. Now we're going to skip over this talking monkey. And then I hate that they brought back the florists, or whatever their name was. But they make a cameo. This is from X-Men 2. And what I hated about X-Men 2 is it's these old grannies fighting the X-Men. And it's basically a LOL so random joke to the Golden Girls. I hated it. I tossed that issue. I hated it. Everything about it I hated. But Hickman here, you know, he utilizes them to talk about this technology that he sells to this team. And that's as far as I'm going to go with it. You guys can read that at your convenience. Now, what I'm disappointed about, again, if you guys go watch the trailer for Inferno, or if you don't want to watch the trailer on Marvel's website, as I said on After Dark, we did a review on it. It very much teases at how everything is going to go FUBAR quickly. And I was hoping that that's what this book was going to kind of open with. But I don't know if this is Hickman pacing himself. But the lack of action in this book is what kills it. There's a lot of sitting and talking and exposition dumps. That's boring, especially for a book, an oversized book at $6, and we get a lot of standing and talking and hearing Moira bitch. This right here goes on and on and on and on. Now there's a significance to it. I will say that this at least builds up that there's a tension between Magneto, Xavier, and Moira, and how they've talked about how their goals have sort of separated, but you could tell how salty Moira is. She's like, you guys don't listen to me anymore. And then you find out that Moira doesn't really have any, like they're saying you're free to come and go as you want. You're the most important person in the world because of her knowledge. And they did something to her that even just escalates it. But what Moira finally says, in order to kind of calm down this irritations that the three of them have together, she says, I want you to completely wipe out any remnant that we have backed up of Destiny. And so that's where we get into thinking, okay, this is going to start getting interesting. We go to Magneto's volcanic island that we saw in House of X. And if you guys remember, for those of you that have been reading, there are backups of the Cerebro helmet on different locations in case one is compromised, as it was in Benjamin Percy's X-Force, which if you've not been reading at least the beginning of Percy's X-Force run, phenomenal. But Xavier gets shot in the head, so the helmet on Krakoa gets destroyed, but they have backup helmets to resurrect Xavier. But you start to see Xavier and all of them start to collect all of the helmets. You see Magneto approach Sinister to collect Destiny's DNA vials. And Moira being salty, even though mutants are supposed to have amnesty once they set foot on Krakoan soil, as we saw with Omega Red in the Wolverine run. And even though Sabretooth gets put into suspended animation for his crimes that he does in America, he's still delivered from that court system to be judged at the Quiet Council. So it's kind of hard to see that Moira is still holding this resentment for something that happened in another life. But that's kind of what really is lighting the powder keg, as we saw in X-Men 20, where Xavier and Magneto told Raven, Mystique, to go to the Orcish island to try to take, or the planet orbiting thing, to wipe out Nimrod. She fails. And so the way that they've been holding the carrot over her head is saying, if you do this, if you do that, we'll resurrect Destiny. So they've been kind of tempting fate, and again, going against Moira's wishes. I'm kind of glad that we finally get to see a little bit more with her, because she's been sort of shrouded in this mystiqueness, so to speak. But I hate that now that we see her, she just comes off as this major bitch. So I don't know if her intentions for Krakoa are supposed to be good, or if she's starting to change her mind. Who knows? And then we get some more talking with Doug Ramsey, more talking with Krakoa, more talking with Cyclops and Bishop and Storm. And then we get to the Quiet Council, which leads to more sitting and talking. Now, the other thing that Moira proposes is to get Raven off the Quiet Council, because they said, she's like, you know that I hate her and Destiny with a purple passion, and yet you put her in a place of authority. And so they said, find some way to get her off the council. So what I was talking about with talking in Cyclops is Cyclops talks about how he needs to step down as basically the general, or the general at arms or men at arms of Krakoa, if he's going to be out in the field. So they give it to Bishop. And so Magneto and Xavier use that as the Quiet Council, saying we should maybe take a page from our warriors and start saying that some of us need to retire. And they're trying to say it's voluntary, like Magneto even low-key tries to say, oh, I've thought about it. And you can just see the, what do you call it? The sarcasm or the deceitfulness in his voice. And then Raven says something like to the degree of, yeah, change is a very good idea. And I like how Cyclops, Xavier's like, you have no idea how much it pleases me to hear you say that, Raven. And she's like, I know a mutant who you should consider for the council. And like, what? There'll be time for... No. The time is now. Now, I don't want to spoil how the book ends. But I really had high hopes, especially considering the fact when you pick up the book, as I said a couple of reviews ago, where the cover should really echo what the book's about. Seeing Moira stand amongst all these knocked out or presumably dead X-Men has nothing to do with what we read about. Again, this thick book, $6 for talking. This is your last hurrah, man. Suck people in. Like maybe halfway, like the stuff between Moira and the Quiet Council, that should be like the first half of the book, and then the rest of it, I would say the way to get people into it is turn Krakoa upside down. But instead we just get a lot of building. Now I understand pacing and a little bit of slowness, but when you have first issue of your event book at $6 and it's talking. Good God, how much talking do we need? Seriously. And then you're thinking, okay, we're going to start focusing on Inferno. This is awesome. But then it's like, oh, now you need to go read Sword number 8 and Wolverine number 16. No, I'm good. I'll wait till issue 2 of this. And I bet you 10-1, and I hope I'm wrong, is that this is going to probably pull the same shit that Death Metal did. My biggest gripe with Dark Knight's Death Metal is all the big stuff didn't happen in the event book. Everything happened in the spin-off books. So I have this real funny feeling that, okay, we get this interesting reveal at the end of this book. And you're thinking, okay, is that going to continue on in Inferno number 2, or do we got to pick up Sword number 8 to see what happens next, which I'm not going to do. I'll stick with this, and I hope to my stars and garters that I'm wrong. But it's just seeming that people don't know how to do events anymore. And I'm like, sitting and talking and making all your big stuff happen in other books to lessen the impact of your event book, that's not how you comic. That's not how you event. But that's just my personal opinion. What do you guys think? If you've enjoyed this comic, please, first and foremost, support your local comic shop and pick up a copy. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that way as we can continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below, or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.